So hello and welcome to the Lewis Nichols Show, and I'm really excited to bring on my next guest, talking about his brand new book. So let's say hello to Josh Widdicombe. How are you?
I'm very good, thanks. I'm having a lovely day. I'm just going from interview to interview, but in a way that you're thankful that I can do it all from home. If I'd done this 18 months ago, I'd been traveling around the country, but now I'm just doing it all from my office. It's lovely.
You know, I never thought I was going to read a book, especially from for me being from Cornwall, that not only mentions Flambards but Trago Mills as well. I mean, the way you describe Trago Mills is exactly how I remember it being.
I think it's a travesty that up until the year 2021, no one had discussed Trago Mills in literature, and I felt it was my life's work to change this.
It was one of those kind of stores where you would go in, you'd buy stuff that you didn't think you needed, and you probably didn't, and then it just ends up in a cupboard at home. And like I think you mentioned in the book, there's always some autobiography or something in there,
Yeah.
piles of them that just weren't selling.
Well, do you know what, mate? There, but for the grace of God, in 2 months' time, go I. If this interview doesn't go well, mate, that's going to be me and Trago Mills.
It was brilliant. I must admit, though, this book wasn't in a very good way. Was not what I was expecting at all. I thought it was going to be kind of like an autobiography, and there is a lot of aspects in your life. But I love the journey throughout various TV shows. Many that I had to Google because I don't remember.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of it was educational. El Dorado, I've never heard of, and I was straight on Wikipedia looking that up. But I mean, TV was a big thing for you, and it wasn't something you would just watch in the background. You kind of almost studied it. It became a big part of your life. You knew the cast members' real names. Why was
Yeah.
TV such a big thing for you?
TV was not just big for me. TV was central to our lives in the 90s. TV was the most important piece of furniture in the house. It was the most important piece of culture. Like, you know, I say in the book, 2 million people bought Definitely Maybe. 12 million people would watch How Do They Do That with Des Lynam every week. That's how much more pop. No one remembers that. Everyone talks about how Definitely Maybe took over the country. It's like 1 in 30 people bought that album. 1 in 5 was watching How Do They Do That. It was the last decade when television was central to our lives. And I wanted to write a book about the 90s and growing up in the 90s. And the only way I could think of doing that justice was to do it through the kind of the filter of television, because that was how I got every piece of information in the world. And so each chapter is based on a different TV show as a starting point to tell the story of my youth and of the 90s.
Do you know, one person I love that you do talk about in the book, and it's somebody that I could just imagine being on Gogglebox, is your gran. She just seems so funny. I could imagine her today sat watching, being on Gogglebox, having those opinions, watching TV shows of people she kind of dislikes, but having those witty comments. I mean, you seem to have really fond memories of watching TV with her.
She was an amazing woman. So she was a retired actress, and all that entails was correct in her character, if you know what I mean. And she'd just sit and she'd watch television and she'd slag people off, or there'd be people she knew, and she'd have little bits of information on them, like John Savardant, who played Fred Elliott. Yeah, he used to carry a handbag, stuff like that. Just minor, strange details that she'd have. I don't think she could have got on Gogglebox because I think too much of it would have been legally compromising. I don't think anything she just said would have made the edit legally. Yeah, it was amazing talking about people like that. And I just loved writing it because I wrote it during lockdown, and it was an escape. And I hope it reads like an escape. People read books about, Lord of the Rings for escapism. I think if I'm going to escape anywhere, I want to escape to the 90s and television, and that's what I did writing it, and I hope that's what people will get from reading it. Well, and if you weren't there, also, it's not like you had to be there and it's a nostalgic thing. I hope it creates an image of the time for people that weren't there.
Well, I mean, this book, I think everyone's going to love it. Well, unless you're Jim Davidson or Eamon Holmes, but I think everybody else is going to love this book, that's for sure. One thing I do want to go back to, which is where your love and passion for comedy actually came from. Can you kind of remember that moment where you just fell in love and knew that comedy was the kind of industry you wanted to go in?
So when I was young, I wasn't watching these shows thinking I want to make them, because it felt completely divorced from my life, in the same way, I currently, at the moment, couldn't imagine being, an Australian sheep farmer. Like, it's just a different world.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Hopefully I won't end up doing that. But like, I don't like the heat and I'm vegetarian. But apart from that, it's a dream job. But I think that like it just felt different to my life. So I didn't aspire to do it. But what I did do unknowingly was become obsessed with comedy. And I was obsessed watching it all and learning about it subconsciously. Just it all goes when you're interested in something. That's the thing when you're a kid, right? Is that when you're interested in stuff as a kid, it goes in and it stays there. And that's why we can tell you the names of players that played in football teams of the team we support when we're a kid better than we can from this season. Do you know what I mean? I
Yeah.
could tell you the Plymouth Argyle team from 1996 easier than I could tell you the team that turned out on Saturday. But because you're fascinated by the world and certain bits of it. So you just absorb it like a sponge if you're interested in it. If you're not interested, you don't. So in the same way, I never learned how to do the different verbs in French. I did learn everything about television comedy because for some reason it was something that fascinated me.
Well,
I thought everyone was into it. I thought everyone was that kind of dweeby fan, but then it turned out I was the only person that knew who the producer of Fantasy Football League was.
That was the thing reading this. I mean, the bit especially where you actually did watch Neighbours twice a day. I mean, you would watch the repeats as well because you were just that gripped. And you kind of, it's only when you get further in the book you realise that there wasn't a lot to do in the place that you grew up. So you kind of understand why maybe you did watch TV twice. But I mean, this book had so many fascinating stories that I don't want to give too much away. But one thing that jumped out to me was
Give it away. They'll still buy the book.
You tried to hide the fact that you were vegetarian, even to your friends, for so many years, and you would make these kind of weird excuses as to why you were eating certain things at Wimpy, or why on a school trip you were down as vegetarian, and it was something you didn't kind of feel comfortable for, sharing with your friends originally. And do you read that back, especially when you wrote it, and kind of think, why was that a big thing for me?
Yeah, I think the whole book. I think that is like. I think I was a strange child, in that everyone's a strange child, aren't they? I've got children and you go, bloody hell, they're weird, in a good way. Like, all children have quirks. And like, and I think that was basically I was just really wanting to fit in at secondary school, and you just sand off any kind of difference. And in your head, something like being a vegetarian, because your parents are, feels like the defining thing that will mean you don't have any friends, when in fact it was such a non-event. But by the time you're committed to something, for all I know, there was other people at my school that were pulling the same trick, but I doubt it very much.
And you know what I love as well with the book is when watching you, and big fan of you with comedy, is I'm always used to those kind of quick remarks, the sometimes sarcastic comments, which I love. And there's a quote in the book which I just love, which is, these days if you turn on TV and see someone you cannot stand, brackets, Ramesh Raghunathan, Rob Beckett. That was just, there's so many times in the book that you say things that I would just imagine you saying on the stage, and it's great that I can visualize with this book almost you standing up at a show. You can see
Yeah.
it. Brilliant.
Well, I think while obviously I prefer everyone to buy the both formats, the audiobooks like doing really well already. Like, and I think that's because you hope that people are used to listening. I mean, I had someone contact me on Instagram and they said, will you be doing this as an audiobook? Because 90% of the reason I like you is your voice, which I thought was really funny. And like, I think there's something about like, you want to write it so people can imagine you reading it. And when I read the audiobook, it really came alive, I'd hope, in that sense of, you don't want it to feel like, you want it to feel like it's your book. It's because we can talk about it being a book about the 90s, a book about TV or whatever, but really you want it to be a book about yourself as well, because you want you to be in it, particularly if your name and photo on the front cover.
Yeah, one show that just I feel becomes bigger and bigger every series, of course, is The Last Leg. I mean, it's just phenomenal, and it grows and it gets bigger each time. But you guys just look like you're having the most fun. Does it even feel like a job for you when you're on there, or does it just feel like you're hanging out with your best mates?
No, it does feel like a job, yes. It really does. No, it's really fun. The record of the show is great, and it's fun, and the meetings are fun and stuff. I mean, we did 12 nights for the Paralympics, which was an amazing thing to do, but I'm not going to lie, that felt like a job. When you're doing 12 nights at 10 p.m. in a row, that felt pretty grueling. But you know, it's a really fun thing to do. I love it. And you know, you've read the book, right? And you go, well, maybe in my head, I'm doing a live Channel 4 show on a Friday night. This is as close to TFI Friday as I'm ever going to get, and then all that kind of stuff. So you kind of go, this is, yeah, it's wish fulfillment in a way, isn't it? It's great. I'm so lucky to do it.
I mean, over the years, you've been on the biggest panel shows going, and you've probably been asked this before, but do you have a favorite? So when the agent rings and says, right, you're on this today, that you get more excited because you know it's going to be fun. So you obviously mock the
Yeah,
winner.
yeah. I think the two that jump out at me, excluding your own shows, obviously, but the two that jump out at me are I absolutely loved doing Taskmaster. That was amazing. But you obviously can't just reappear on that. But Would I Lie to You is amazing. That's brilliant. I recently did Blankety Blank, which they brought back, and I had an absolute time of my life. I was like, this is brilliant fun. I absolutely loved Blankety Blank. That goes straight into my top 3.
Well, it's funny that you mentioned Would I Lie to You, because I want to finish off with, it's one of my favorite shows, and I know that I'll never get to ever go on the show. So I want to give you 3 facts about myself, and I want to see if you can work out which one is false. So 2 of them are correct, 1 of them is false. So the first one is that I thought Tutankhamun was an advertising mascot for Ferrero Rocher. The second one was I was on Dick and Dom in the bungalow dressed as a condom. And the third is I once announced the wrong celebrity had passed away on my live radio show.
Oh, well, obviously I want the third one to be true straight away. Obviously I want them all to be true. I don't know whether Dick and Dom would have a condom. That just feels... that feels like they just wouldn't do that. So I'm going to go with... I think that's the false one. I just dream that the third one is true.
So you are correct. So I once announced on radio that Shirley Bassey had died, but it was actually Shirley Temple.
Do you mean Shirley Ballas you announced? Sorry.
No, Shirley Bassey.
Oh, Bassey. Sorry.
I announced that she passed away,
no.
but it was Shirley Temple. And then I thought Tutankhamun was like Bertie Bassett because I thought he was a Ferrero and the Egyptian pyramids.
Oh, so. Wow.
So you did good.
I did good. I'm pleased.
But it's been so great having you on the show.
Oh, genuinely, it's been an absolute pleasure.
Like I wasn't even I was a 90s child, but I didn't grow up watching the TV. It was more in the noughties. But what I loved about this was the fact that you explain it in so much detail. You feel like you know the show, and there was so much that I could relate in there, obviously from being in the Southwest as well. So good luck with this, not that you're going to need it, and thank you for coming on the show.
Cheers, man. It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you.
Cheers. See you soon.